Okay, we begin Beis Hashem Yisborach, the Mamer of Basi Ligani, Tavshin Chav Gimel. So this year we're learning Ois Yud Gimel. This Mamer will explain Ois Yud Gimel, which we learned. And as it's known, the Rebbe, for the first 20 years after Yud Shvat till Tavshin Lamed, went through the 20 Prokim of Basi Ligani. And then the Rebbe began again in Tavshin Lamed Aleph, going through the 20 Prokim. When the Rebbe went through the second time explaining the 20 Prokim, the Rebbe said that it's Keflayim L'Tushia. Second time around, bringing down the Inyan with a greater measure, with a greater Kayach. I think we're holding it out by the fourth cycle of learning Basi Ligani. So it's Keflayim. So definitely, we're more than ready for these Giluyim to happen, B'Peil Mamish. The Rebbe refers to Ois Yud Gimel in the Mamer as the Ois of Echad. Yud Gimel is Gematria Echad. So, Echad, the Achdus of the Eibishter, which will be revealed when Mashiach comes. With all the Cheshbainis, without all the Cheshbainis, but for sure ready for the real thing, the real Basi Ligani. Basi Ligani Achaisi Kalom Mei Vikvek Tushis Mer Vichami Admur Bala Ilula Mashakasa B'Medrash. So the Friediger Rebbe brings what the Medrash says, B'Pirish Basi Ligani. Why does the Pasuk say that the Eibishter says, I came to my garden? How is it mine? The Eibishter comes into the world. So it should have said that the Eibishter came to the Gan. He refers to the world as a garden, but what's the pshat of Gani? So the Medrash explains, Gani, that it's mine, it's the Eibishter's place, Liganuni. So besides the fact that it's saying that it's the Eibishter's, which is the Eibishter's garden, but it also means that it belongs to the Eibishter, similar to a Gnuni. Gnuni is a place where a chassan and kala are privately and separately themselves, right? So Gnuni refers to that private place that the Eibishter considers his world to be his private place. L'makayim shahaya ikri batchila. So therefore, what this means is that Basi Ligani, the Eibishter, is the place where the Eibishter's primary presence was in the beginning of creation. Yeah, you have here. This is different, a little bit different, this one. It's a lot different? Okay. So this is the place where the Eibishter's primary presence was in the beginning of creation. The primary presence of the Eibishter was here below. So it's Yidua, this lashon over here that it says Ikr Shchina, the Rabbi explained what the pshat of the word Ikr Shchina means. Ikr Shchina means the Eibishter himself. Okay, the details the Rabbi explained in the first Mamer, Basi Ligani Tavshin Yud Aleph. Ikr Shchina was in the Ikr, the Mohus, and the Etzem of the Eibishter that was here, Dafke B'Tachtainim. The purpose of creation was for the Dira B'Tachtainim. So when it says that Ikr Shchina B'Tachtainim Hoisa, what does that really mean? The kavanah of the Bria that Atzmos has in creation was sensed and experienced and felt in every aspect of the world. That's what means Shchina B'Tachtainim Hoisa. The way the world exists now, after Chetei Tzadas and Bechlal, the Chatoim, is naifen that the Kavanas Abriya, the Shchin of the Bria, meaning what the Eibishter, the Elokus, and the existence of the Bria are sort of separated from each other. There's a reality of Olam Hazeh, there's a reality of a Tachten, and there's Elokus, there's what the Eibishter wants with it. And that's like a deeper layer, that's the Pnimius, that's something that's higher, but it's not sensed and it's not experienced in the Tachten experience, so in our reality of the world. When the Eibishter created the world, the Kavanas Habriya, Ikri, what the Eibishter wants with creation, was sensed, was here, was below, and everything was flowing with that Kavana. So through the Avedas that occurred. The first Aveda from Adam Marishayin, the Aveda of Chetei Tzadas, and then 7 generations, which includes Adam Marishan himself, so the various different Avedas drove the Shechina out from this world, or really the term Silku means it doesn't literally mean to drive the Shechina out, but it means there was a hell of a hester. It concealed the presence of the Shechina here in this world. The Kavana, the connection of the presence, of the godliness, the godly Kavana in the world was not sensed as much. And it drove the Shechina out level by level, further and further. Then, finally, Hischel Avram Lahoyre des Hashchina Mamayla Lamata. Avram Avinu began with his Aveda bringing the Shechina back down into this world. Ad Moshe, until the 7th generation, Shuhu Ashvi, Moshe Rabbeinu V'chol Ashvi and Chavivin. The 7th is always cherished. So Moshe Rabbeinu being the Shvi, Shahoyre des Hashchina Merikia Ha'alef La'aretz. He brought down the Shechina from the last Rakia that's closest to Aretz. He brought the Shechina down here in this world. Shezeu she'oz ne'emar, and therefore it says in the generation of Moshe Rabbeinu, Hatzivoi, the mitzvah of Asli Mikdash v'shachanti b'seicham, to build a Mikdash, to build a Mishkan, and the Shechina dwells in the Mishkan. Shehu inyan diras hashchina b'tachteinu, the dwelling of the Shechina here below. So the Lashon here, the Mamer, the Rabbi begins saying that Moshe Rabbeinu, he's the Shvi, and he brought the Shechina down l'mayla l'mata. But it says that this is the Tzivoi v'asili Mikdash. The Tzivoi v'asili Mikdash is not going on Moshe Rabbeinu, but it's going on the Yidden, on the entire generation. That all the Yidden in that generation have the mitzvah to bring the Shechina b'tachtenim. In other words, through Moshe Rabbeinu, all the Yidden of that generation, Shvi, when it says Shvi, v'chol Shvi and Chavivin, all the Yidden connected to Moshe Rabbeinu have the mitzvah to bring the Shechina down l'mata b'aretz. In some places it's divided. It says that Moshe Rabbeinu brought the Shechina down l'mata refers to Matan Torah. That's the one inyan. And then there's another inyan that then to bring down the Shechina b'kfiyas, that it should have a makom kavua, a mishkan kavua in this world, that refers to the building of the Mishkan. And that was through the Aveda of the Yidden. So here the Rebbe spells out that when it says here, Moshe hu Ashvi, it refers to all the Yidden in that generation of Shvi. So bringing the Shechina down l'mata ba'aretz is accomplished through the Aved of all Yidden. Kadig v'shachanti b'soicham, b'soich kolechot v'echot, that Eibusha dwells amongst them. So it doesn't only refer to the actual Mishkan, that the Eibusha dwells in the Mishkan, but b'soich kolechot v'echot within every single Yid. So that means that every individual Yid, through his personal Aveda, brings the Shechina down Lamata in himself. So therefore we see that this inyan of bringing the Shechina down Lamata is Kol HaShvi and Chavivin, the whole generation. The whole generation is Shvi and Chavivin, and all Yidden bring the Shechina down Lamata Baris with their Aveda. Of course, through the Kayach and through Moshe Rabbeinu. So what does this Aveda of Asili Mishkan consist of? Dihine Klolos Aveda of Asili Mikdash Koi Alasiyas Mishkan. So the building the Mikdash refers to the Mishkan. Shalzeh Ne'emar. So what was the Mishkan itself built from? Vasisa es akrashim le Mishkan atzei shitim aimdim. So the krashim of the Mishkan, the walls of the Mishkan, were made of atzei shitim aimdim. So the Friedrich Rebbe in the Mamer explains both the significance of the word keresh and the significance of the word shittim. So the Friedrich Rebbe explains at length what's the significance of this. So there's two details here. One is that Aveda is lases mishtus, shittim dulu umazet, to take the foolishness of the world, of the opposite side. Shtus the oilam, the shtus of the Welt, which the Friedrich Rebbe explains by Riches, all the pratim of the shtus of the Welt, the shtus lamatim mitam v'das, whether it refers to hanachas oilam, things that a person does that make no sense, but this is just the ways of the world, the way people do things, or the shtus l'umazeh, when a person has the ruach shtus, when a person has a taiva, and it can't control it, so to speak. It's beyond control, it makes no sense, but a person through these taivas gets involved in foolish things. Rabbi Riches, he explains there. The union of shtus l'umazeh, shtus l'olam, sheyiyeh, to transform. How do you fight this level of shtus? If the person is not thinking rationally, so then it's impossible to fight it with seichel. So instead, you have to transform that koyach of shtus l'umazeh, sheyiyeh shtus kedusha, that it should be shtus in the positive sense. That a person should dedicate himself to Deibusha with Mesiris Nefesh, higher than Seichel, beyond rationale. So that's the inyan of the Atzei Shittim that were built for the Mishkan. The material of the wood is called Shittim. And this is also why the walls of the Mishkan are called Kroshim. Keresh Oisi is Sheker, because the Kroshim represents the Sheker, the falsehood of the world. Hainu shemishekera olam yamidu binyan sheyeh mikdash mishkan lo yizbarach. From the sheker of the world, you're able to build the structure of the Mishkan, that it will become a dwelling for the Eibishter. So the very sheker, the very falsehood of the world itself, becomes the mikdash, the place where the Eibishter dwells in. Okay, so it teaches over there in the Mamer, there's kesher, there's sheker, there's keresh. Okay, barich is gedayla. There's these two inyanim over here. There's the shtus del umazeh and there's the sheker of Eilam. Okay, which are connected obviously, but sheker Eilam could even be lower than the inyan of shtus del umazeh. You take mamish the sheker, the lowest element of Eilam Hazeh, and that itself becomes the place where the Eibishter could dwell in it. Applying this to the Aved of every individual, the Eibishter dwelling within every individual Yid, who akirav lelakos, is bringing himself closer to the Eibishter. So when it says akirav lelakos, it obviously means, like it's explained there in the Mamer of Basi Ligani, Iskafye, Ishapche, those are the two main things that the Friedrich Rebbe keeps on speaking about, because especially when you talk about Shtus Telomazeh and the Sheker of the world, that's also the Sheker that could be by every individual to the Aveda of Iskafye and Ishapche, that's the Kiruv. So what was the main Aveda in the Mishkan itself? The Aveda of Karbanis. The karbanis represents a person bringing all of his kaiches close to the Eibishter, dedicating all of his kaiches to the Eibishter. In what kind of manner does a person bring his kaiches close to the Eibishter? To elevate himself to the place, to the place of a secret, to a hidden level, to a place of Ein Sof. So, meaning, if a person dedicates himself to the Eibishter with some kind of a level of seichel, or some kind of other level of his own mitzias, so that you don't reach until Ein Sof, because you're limited within your own mitzias. But because we're speaking over here about a person that's serving the Eibishter with shtus de kedusha and transforming sheker into becoming connected to the Eibishter, that reaches all the way to Ein Sof. That's the unlimited connection of a Yid to the Eibishter that the karbanas are about. This brings about also, as a result of the connection of a Yid to the Eibishter in this unlimited fashion, it brings about also the Hamshacha from above to below. Also, Ein Sof comes down in the world. When the Lashon of Chazal, Nachas Ruach Lefonai, so the Nachas Ruach, that it Kavayachol is Ma'ir Lamaila, it triggers from above a Hamshacha that it comes down here into this world. The Eibishter responds as a Hamshacha of Ein Sof through this, that Amarti V'Naser Etzaini. So don't forget, as we already learned in Ois Yud Gimel, that Friedrich Rebbe focuses in the Ois that we're going to be learning about in this Mamer, about the Koyach of Oir Ein Sof Lamata Adin Tachlis. So the Rebbe, right at the beginning of the Mamer, points out this prat, and there's a lot of pratim that the Friedrich Rebbe speaks about when he talks about karbanis. The Rebbe right away points to the inyan of Raza, the Ein Sof, this inyan of bringing down Ein Sof into the world, Lamata Mata Adin Tachlis, which will be explained by Riches in the Mamer, how Ein Sof is present and comes down into this world. The Friedrich Rebbe continues explaining in the Hemshech of the Maimarim, Shekadei Lasais, in order to accomplish this, Shemishek Erailam, Vishtos de La'omazeh, from the falsehood of the world, and the foolishness of the other side, that should be transformed, and it should become a place of dwelling for the Eibishter, is Hine Alzeh Hi Amulchame Shanasas Al Yedei Bnei Yisrael. This is the war that Yidden have to fight. And that's why Yidden, when they come out of Mitzrayim, are referred to as Tzivis Havaya, the Eibishter's army. That's the Pashat, the title of Tzvais, Tzivis Havaya. Yidden are fighting to conquer this territory of Lu'um Mazeh and bring it into Kedusha. The Friedrich Rebbe explains in the Mamer, there are actually three different meanings of what the word Tzava means. Remember, the Friedrich Rebbe says there's the Taich of Tzava Kipshutai, that it refers to an army. There's the Taich of Tzava, that it means a time, a set time. The Aveda of Yidden is dafki here in this world, in the Zman, in the Hagbala of Zman. And the third pshat is Tzava Meloshen Tzivyoim V'yoifi. There's a certain beauty in the Yidden's Aveda, the way the Aveda is combined of different aspects, and the certain third Piddush. But here, the simple pshat, the Indian of Tzivus Havai, that Yidden are the Yebishter's army to conquer the kaiches of the ummahs that we see in the world and bring them into Kedusha. Shakulam Yeshnam B'Avedis Adam, so all aspects of Atzava apply to a Yid's Aveda, Lamale Shlichus HaKadosh Baruch Hu B'Olam, for every individual Yid to fulfill his shlichus in this world. After the Fidig Rebbe explains Barichas, the Indian of Atzava, Mamshech U'Masber U'Mavayer, so here in Ois Yud Beis of the Mamer of Basi Ligani, the Fidig Rebbe continues, and here he begins to explain when it comes to a time of war, in order to be victorious in this battle, the king is ready to squander, to give out, without any cheshbainis, all of those treasures that he has. What kind of treasures are we talking about? Very precious treasures. So generally, not only will he not give them out, distribute them freely in the way he does for the Muhammad, these are treasures that is not for anybody to even see at all. It's not exposed, it remains in a hidden place. It's behelim. In other words, beruchnius, it means it's a level which is completely removed. Fidig Rebbe describes in the mashal that it's not only treasures that the king has gathered in himself, in his generation, treasures that have been gathered that the kingdom has for generations, for many generations. So obviously, these are all pratim and explaining in the nimshal as well how high of levels these are, of dargis of elokus, that it's not only is not mevazbis, but it's not even shown b'chlal, and it's midayre deiris. It's very, very high level. Another detail that the Friedrich Rebbe adds, even more than this, that the king is ready to give all those eitzris, which are very, very personal, and he's very, very deeply connected to them. It's almost, I think that the Friedrich Rebbe describes it, that these treasures, it's like this like identifies what the whole kingdom is. The fact that the kingdom has these unique, special treasures, it's like one with the king himself. So the king is ready to be mevazbez all those eitzeris. So this includes nichlal gam shahamelech maimed es atzmoi b'sakana kaviyachol. So much so that the king is ready to place himself into a danger, kedei lenatzech b'mulchama, in order to be victorious in the battle. So therefore, the point of here is that the nimshal is, that this is what the Friedrich Rebbe is going to explain. What does this mean, lamaila? That this tremendous giluyim and coming from the Eibishter himself to empower a yid to be able to do his aveda in the world, to be menatzeich in the Muhammad. So v'hinei b'shvil nisin nasayit samul maila, in order for the Eibishter to give a yid this treasure from above, tzarech li is gam keli lemata. A yid has to make a keli from this below. Shezehu inyan ha'itzer de lemata ba'avedis adam. There's an eitzer from below. Every yid has his eitzer that he has to serve the Eibishter with. From the lashon of Chazal, usually regarding the eitzer, is the eitzer of Yiras Shamayim. Every yid has an eitzer of Yiras Shamayim, which is not referring now to a plain level of Yiras Shamayim, because we're talking about a level of Yiras Shamayim that's referred to as an eitzer. Every yid has that treasure of Yiras Shamayim in his heart from his neshama that he has to dedicate to the Eibishter. When a yid exhibits real mesiras nefesh and he serves the Eibishter with absolute dedication, so that's mamshach malmaila as well, that the Eibishter gives him this eitzah, meaning those very hidden levels, till the king himself is revealed to the yid. Similar to what the point that the Rebbe said before, when you get to karbanis. Just like regarding karbanis, what's the emes inyan of karbanis? The emes inyan of karbanis is ba'ofen sha'olam ad raza the ein seif, that a yid dedicates himself to the Eibishter with a shtus de kedusha, without any cheshbainis, and that reaches to ein seif, raza the ein seif. So that lashon of raza the ein seif, it's a secret, it's hidden, is similar over here that I was saying, when you get to the inyan of the tzava, that when a yid serves the Eibishter with his eitzer, with that deep treasure that he's completely dedicated to the Eibishter, that draws down the Eitzris Malmaila higher than all the other levels that are usually available. On the Vayer, then the Friedrich Rebbe concludes this inyan, even though when the king distributes the treasures in the wartime, so through whom does he distribute them? Through the generals of the army, that are the ones that know exactly where the money should be spent and what it should be used for and where it should go. They're the ones that are in charge. But nevertheless, it's understood that what's the real purpose of this money, of all these eitzres? The kavana is that it should reach to regular plain foot soldiers. Those Anshe Achayel, they are the ones that are actually bringing the victory. They're the ones that are conquering the actual territory. They're there out in the front lines in the battlefield. Move on, so it's understood from this. Shagam ha'oitzer tzarich liyos b'chol echad ve'echad. So this Aveda, to serve the Eibishter with this Eitzer, to receive this Eitzer, or to have this Eitzer, as the Rebbe said before, you have to have the Eitzer in your Aveda. And then through this you receive the Eitzer from above. This is negeya to every individual Yid. Nobody should say to themselves, we're talking over here about tremendous Giluyim, or we're talking over here about things that belong to people that are Bali Madrege, or Yechidei Zgula. Even if it's true that the Eitzres Mamayla come down through the Pekidei Achayel, but they're not the Kavanah. If the generals keep all this Eitzres for themselves, nothing will be accomplished. The real Kavanah of the Chatchila, that the Eibishter is Mevazbez, the Eitzres, is all for the Anshe Achayel, for the simple foot soldiers, for every single Yid. Shaharei Kol Yisrael, every individual Yid, Afila Elu She'enam Pekidei Achayel, even those that don't rise to the level in ranks to be Pekidei Achayel generals or higher levels in connection to the Eibishter, they're not big Bali Madrege, they don't have big Hasagis and big. But it's not about the big Hasagis, because over here, what are we talking about? We're talking about the Mesiris Nefesh, the Shtuste Kedusha, which is shaykh to every single Yid. Every single Yid has that koyach of Mesiris Nefesh to dedicate himself to the Eibishter. So, Haim Tzivus Havaya. Every single Yid is included in the description of Tzivus Havaya. When Yidden come out of Mitzrayim, they're all Tzivus Havaya. And that's who the real Kavanah is in these Eitzres, to give every single Yid the koyach to do his Avodah in the world in his area. So this is all the mashal of the king that gives the Eitzres Yikarim for the Anshe Achayel. So what's the nimshal of this? What's the nimshal of this huge treasure that the Eibishter gives every single Yid? Oh, time flies. So the Frierdiker Rebbe, what?
What's the nimshal of the Pekidei Achayel?
The Pekidei Achayel. And Bali Madrege, Yechidei Zgula, people that are on a higher level. The Rebbe doesn't spell it out, but that's Bepashtus. Correct. Oh, and a Chanami. So that's what the Rebbe Taka explains. Because Sof, it does go through the Pekidei Achayel, right? When the king gives out all those treasures, so the Pekidei Achayel, the generals are the ones that have to administer and decide how they're distributing it and where it goes to. Let's just finish this in over here. So what's the nimshal of this? The Frierdiker Rebbe begins explaining Inyan ha'oitzer lamayla. What's the treasure that the Eibishter gives from above? So what is the nimshal here? Apiyat tikunei zaya. The lashon that it says in the zaya, oirein seif lamayla aden keitz lamata aden tachlis. That when you speak about oirein seif, there are two levels: lamayla aden keitz or lamata aden tachlis. So even though it seems to be the same idea, it's just repeating the same inyan in two ways, but it's two different levels. There's Lamayla and then there's Lamata. Later, towards the end of the Hemshech, in Oisid Zayin, the Frierdiker Rebbe will explain, the level of Lamayla den Kates, that's the treasure. In order to appreciate and to understand how great this darga of Oirin Seif Lamayla den Kates is, Makdim levayer ha'inyan lamata adin tachlis. The Frierdiker Rebbe goes through a long arichis, couple of Isias, explaining what the level of lamata adin tachlis is. Shu lamata me'inyan da'erin seif lamayla adin kates. It doesn't reach to that level of lamayla adin kates. U'mi'a'iloid lamata adin tachlis. After the Frierdiker Rebbe explains how great the inyan of the revelation of Eirin Seif lamata adin tachlis is, yuvana iloid lamayla adin kates. From this we can come to understand what's the Eitzer? And the Eitzer is the Lamayla Adin case. Maschil Avayra Inyan, the Lamata Adin Tachlis, Kifishuhu, Be Inyan is Havas Eilemis. Frierdiker Rebbe explains, and this is explained in Ois Yud Beis, the Ois that we learned about last year, what's the musig of the revelation of Eirein Seif Lamata Adin Tachlis. It's expressed in the Hishavas, in creation. The Koyach of the Eibishter creating the worlds is an expression of Eirein Seif Lamata Adin Tachlis. Shuzeh Mashan is Bayer, B'sifa shayach liyom elul shalifnei zeh. That was an Oster Beis that we learned about last year. When the Mamer of Basi Ligani, Tafshin Chav Gimel, Seif Beis. Beginning of Seif Beis. Okay, so here the Rebbe will begin explaining Seif Yud Gimel of the Hemshech that we're learning this year. What's the Rebbe explaining? The Inyan, the Pshat of what it means when the Zayah says Oir Ein Soif Lamata Adein Tachlis. What's the Pshat in Lamata Adein Tachlis? Okay, let's begin learning inside. I'll explain the Hemshech Inyan, what the Rebbe is explaining here. B'sif Yud Gimel Echad. So Yud Gimel is Gematria Echad. So that means that there's something special about the Sif. The Inyan of Echad, the Achdus of the Eibishter. Mamshech Levayer, he continues to explain Inyan Noisaf B'Lamata Adein Tachlis. An additional point regarding Lamata Adein Tachlis. Loi B'Nigeya L'Inyan Ha'es Havos, not explaining how this applies to creation. Ela B'Nigeya L'Spashtus V'Gilui Oir Ein Sof. Rather, here in this ayah, he explains what the pshat of Oir Ein Sof Lamata Adein Tachlis is regarding the Oir itself. That the Oir itself is revealed and it spreads out, it extends Adein Tachlis. In other words, right in the beginning here, the Rebbe comes to Bavarin. L'chayre, the hezber of what Oir Ein Sof Lamata Adein Tachlis was already explained in the previous sites. In Oster Beis, the Friedrich Rebbe explains Barichis what the saying of Lamata Adein Tachlis is. If you remember, we learned last year, Friedrich Rebbe explains that Lamata Adein Tachlis means that not only regarding the hishavos of Olam Ein Sof, but on every level of hishavos, you could see an expression of Koyach Ein Sof. The hishavos is an oifen of bli gvul. And the Friedrich Rebbe explained that this is true even when you get to the hishavos of the lowest olamas, even when you get to the hishavos of our olam. When you look in our olam, you can see marabu masecha, magodlu masecha. What is this marabu magodlu? The endless amount of ribui of nivraim that exist in the world. It's an expression of Ein Sof, because the world is created from Ein Sof. So therefore we see the marabu masecha. And also magodlu masecha. The Rebbe explained in the Mamer there, but to what the pshat of magodlu masecha means. The fact that you see certain things in nature itself that are Ein Sof. L'mashal, the fact that you have the consistency of the Oir HaShemesh that comes up every single day, the chazokim kiyomi bottom. The fact that you have the koyach hatzemeach on the ground. And it's also l'chayra, koyach of Ein Sof. The fact that you have the koyach of pru revu that continues Ein Sof. These are all koyachas of Ein Sof that you could see within the nature of the hishavos, the world that's created. So not only the hishavos of Eilamus al Yainim is Eilamus Ein Kei, it's bli gvul, but even Eilamus Lamata here, it's also Ein Sof. That's what was explained by Riches in the previous sites. So if this is all explained already, so that's the taich of Oir Ein Sof Lamata Adein Tachlis. What's the chiddush in Oster Gimel? What is he coming to explain over here? So the Rebbe teiches, the difference is, in the previous sites, the Friedrich Rebbe is explaining not benegeh to the Oir itself. He's explaining benegeh to the various levels of Eilamus that are created from Oir Ein Sof. That because these Eilamus are created in Oir Ein Sof, so if you look at the Metzias of these Eilamus, you'll see in them the Koyach of Ein Sof that creates them. And the chiddush is, even in the lowest Eilam, Adein Tachlis, Lamata Adein Tachlis, in every level of creation, but that's all a hezber benegeh to the Metzias of the world that's created. Here, in this size, the Friedrich Rebbe is not focusing on the Metzias of the world created from Ein Sof, but actually benegeh to the Gilui and the Hispashtus of Ein Sof itself. That there's a Gilui and Hispashtus of the Ein Sof itself, Adein Sof. That's the focus here.
Which comes lower than the Shabbos?
Lav dafke. Not lower than his havas, but it's a completely different concept. Again, in Oster Beis, the Friedrich Rebbe is explaining when you get to the Metzias of the Welt, well, not only our world, all Eilamist, that if you look at the nature and the Metzias of any Eilamist that are created from Ein Sof, you'll see the Koyach of Ein Sof within the Metzias of that world, within the nature of that world. There's a certain aspect of Libul that you'll find and you'll see within the Metzias of the world itself. So the discussion over there is not the actual Hispashtus of the Ein Sof itself, but it's been negate to the Metzias of the world created from Ein Sof. In this case, the discussion has been negate to the Oir itself, that the Oir itself is Mizgala and Mispashet. Now there's two Lashonos here that the Friedrich Rebbe says. Hispashtus and Gilui, which are two, it's not the same thing. The Rebbe is soon going to focus on what the difference between these two Lashonos are, Hispashtus and Gilui. Many times the Chassidus are brought together, but as we'll see, it doesn't mean exactly the same thing. Okay, so first let's see the Lashon that's quoted that the Rebbe said here in the Mamer from the Friedrich Rebbe. V'zel Lashonos, in the Osid Gimel, the Friedrich Rebbe says, Masha Omer lemata din tachlis. What's the pshat lemata din tachlis in the Tikkun Zohar? Koi ala gilui vos pashtos b'pchines ein soif ve'ein shir ubli gvul mamish ad lemata mata. Lemata din tachlis is it's nisgales, nispashet, it's revealed and it extends the furthest place, the lowest place, without any limitation at all. B'madregis hayesa achreines v'hayesa tachteines, in the last level, in the lowest level, kaneda yesa tachteines is even further, even lower than achreines. Achreines means the last of all the levels of Seder Ishtalshalos, but Lamashi, you come to Eilam Ma'asiyah. Eilam Ma'asiyah, Gashmis is the last of all the worlds, but it's not necessarily the lowest. The lowest, the Rebbe explains, in the Achrein Gufe, you have various different aspects, and then there's the Tachten of the Achrein itself. It's the very lowest aspect. When the Zayah says that it's Lamata din Tachlis, means she's Pashta Sa'ir. That the earth is mispashet endlessly, infinitely. Ad madrege hayoyser mato. It comes to the lowest place. Ad kan l'shayna. This is the lashon of the Friedrich Rebbe, and that is pashtos. Okay, so so that's the nikud over here. But so again, the point is we're all talking about the earth itself. So the first point that Rebbe clarifies is, when I get to the pshat of this, what does the Friedrich Rebbe here mean? When he says here that the earth could extend and reach every single place, that it's nishtalshal, endless levels. He doesn't just mean the fact that the earth can come to endless places, endless levels. And therefore it's called Ein Sof. That itself is a chiddush. Everything is usually defined in its realm of existence. You can't have something that's mispashet in a place that's out of its realm of existence. A davar ruchni is mispashet in the world of ruchnius. A davar gashmi is mispashet in the world of gashmius. And in ruchnius gufa, there's various different levels. Seichel is mispashet in the world of seichel. Everything has its definition of where it could be mispashet. The fact that you say that Ein Sof doesn't have any of those definitions. He could be mispashit out of his realm of existence, and another level, another olam, a different realm, a completely different reality, and he's mispashit there too. Ribu yishtalshalos, in all kinds of elamis, in all kinds of ifanim. That itself is a huge chiddush. Why? Because the Eibishter, his mitzias is not defined. Every mitzias that exists defined according to that realm of existence. Gashmis is defined in Zman HaMakim. Ruchnis is not defined in Zman HaMakim, but even a Ruchnis existence has a certain definition of how it exists. And therefore it can't be mispashet in a place which is out of its definition of existence. Ein Sof is mispashet b'ribu yishtalshalos, and it's not defined by any type of existence. The Eibishter's Ein Sof be'etzem is not related to anything. So that itself is a chiddush. But it's even more than this. What? Elo afile kefi shenimtza lamata din tachlis. There, in every level, in every place where the Ein Sof is mispashet, sham gufu b'efen shel Ein Sof. It's the same Ein Sof. The Ein Sof, the koyach of Ein Sof is unchanged. Now it's not the pshat that he comes to another place and over there he adapts to that level, he changes according to that level. These two things really go together. If you would say that the Eibush is mispashet and he adapts to every level and he doesn't remain Ein Sof, so that means he's affected by that realm of existence. He adapts and gets affected and limited by that realm of existence. He doesn't exist be'etzem there, but he exists according to whatever that level defines it. If he gets defined by that level, so then how could it be mispashet Ein Sof in every single level without getting affected by it? The very fact that we say that the Eibush could be mispashet in every single place and nothing stops him from coming to another level. What the reason why? Because the levels that the Eibush comes into don't limit him, don't define him. So therefore he can be mispashet into every single realm of existence. So therefore it's for that very reason itself that when the Eibush is found in every single level, he's found there how? B'pchinas Ein Sof, an oifen of Ein Sof. He's not defined by the existence of that realm, of that level. Right, so those are the two pratim here. He comes to every place, and he's still bibchinas ein sof. He remains ein sof. Okay, that's the first clarification in the pshat of what the Friediger Rebbe says. Weiter, the Rebbe goes further. Mamshech ba Mamer. The Friediger Rebbe continues and explains shashvach sha'imrim aleirin sof. This praise that we're saying regarding Garin Saif, that he's able to be mispashet and be nisgale hainu loirak ispashtus alagam giloi. So here the Rebbe clarifies that there's two things: there's ispashtus and there's giloi, and giloi is even more than ispashtus. So I don't have the accurate translation of the word hispashtus. I know that giloi means revelation, but hispashtus to extend itself. But I don't know if that's the right translation. I'll tell you what I'm looking for a translation for. L'mashal, when you have an item and it has a reyach, the smell of it is mispashet from the chayfetz, from that item. It's not that the smell doesn't extend from it. It comes out. Hispashtus means it leaves the source. It's something that's, I don't have the right word for it in English. Okay, think of it. Well, Panim, I think you understand what the idea of hispashtus means. Hispashtus and gilui. But here, like I said, the Rebbe clarifies clearly here that there's one thing called hispashtus and there's another thing called gilui. Gilui is even stronger. What's taka the difference between them, we'll see soon. So both the hispashtus and the gilui, lamata adem tachlis. Mata adem tachlis, when it comes down to the lowest place, without any further place possible. Adem tachlis. What is this referring to? What is that mata? Ein akavana hispashtus v'gilui ba'elam ha'sein seif. It's not referring to this that the Eibishter Ein Sof could be mispashet in Eilam Ein Sof. What's Eilam Ein Sof? Eilam Ein Sof is before Tzimtzum. Over there's also Eilam Ein Sof. Vafila Ba'elam Atzilos, and also not this that the Eibishter could be revealed and mispashet in the world of Atzilus. That's also not called Mata. Both of those worlds can't be defined as Mata. The Rebbe clarifies what's the chiddush and what the Friediger Rebbe is saying. Obviously, it's pasha, they're not mata. So the Rebbe says, no, the afal pisha be'erech oir ein soif. Comparing to the Eibishter, comparing to the revelation of Ein Sof, haregam eilumis, or Ein Sof, the eilumis that are created before Tzimtzum, eilumis Ein Sof, balachas kama v'kama eilam atzilus, nekram b'shem eilumis. They're also referred to with the name eilumis. It's called eilumis Ein Sof. What are those Eilumis Ein Sof? So in Eis Yud Beis, the Friediger Rebbe spoke about the fact that Eilumis, before Tzimtzum, there's a Metzias of Spheres there as well. Elamai, those Spheres are called Esa Spheres Agnuzais, or sometimes even higher than the Esa Spheres Agnuzais, the Spheres Ein Kates. Esa Spheres Agnuzais are not really defined Spheres. They're not defined in 10 distinct Spheres. It's Gnuzais, meaning they're part of the source in a way that you can't really divide them into 10. And there's even deeper than that it's just Spheres Ein Kates, the existence of Spheres Ein Kates. Those are Eilumis. It's a Metzias that's created from Ein Sof. But those Eilumis of Ein Sof are completely Ein Sof. It's all included in Ein Sof, it's all defined as Ein Sof, and therefore that's not called Mata. That's not an Indian of Mata. And the same thing also with Atzilus. Right, as the Rebbe brings over here from the Lashon of the Friediger Rebbe's Mamer. But yet you can't say that the praise, that we praise the Eibishter, that he is Lamata Adin Tachlis, refers to Eilam Ein Sof. And it refers to Eilam Atzilos. Why not? So on the Lashon of the Friediger Rebbe's Mamer, the Hine, Eilam Ein Sof Shalifni At Tzimtzum. V'Eilam Atzilos, and also the world of Atzilos, the Shom Meir Ein Sof Begiloi. The fact that Ein Sof is Begilui there, Harem Kalim Ein Sof. It's a world, it's a place which is a Kali for the Ein Sof. So therefore it's not called a Mata. Mata means a place that's not a Kali, a place that's separated. That's over here, this is a place which is a Kali for Ein Sof. Is the Gamma Kalim Harem Elakus Mamish. So it's not only that Ein Sof could shine there, could be revealed there, but it actually could be received there, like as a Kali, could be Niskabel there. Even the Kalim are Lakus Mamish. Spheres Ein Kates, or the Esa Spheres Agnuzis, or even the Esa Spheres of Atzilus. It's all a Lakus Mamish. It's also a Chelik of a Lakus, and therefore they're Kalim for this revelation. V'em Kain, if so, Ein pele klal ha'erin seif meir sham begili. So first of all, it's not a pele that there's a revelation there. If you want to say the shvach of the Eibishter is that he could shine and reveal himself in a place which is Erin Seif Begili there, that it's naturally a place which is connected to him, it's close to him, so to speak, that's not a pella. V'chein, so to ein pella mashahem yechelim lekabel Erin Seif Hagoli. And even this, that in these worlds, whatever mitzias these worlds have, the kalim of Erin Seif Shalifni at Tzimtzum, of the Eilim is Shalifni at Tzimtzum. You don't really have a mitzias of kalim there, but whatever mitzias of Eilim is, there is Lifni at Tzimtzum, and then the kalim of the world of Atzilus. The fact that they're able to be mekabel the Erin Seif Hagoli, that's also not a pella. V'hainu she'ein ze pella she'erin seif yachal espashetzam. What this means is, one second. Did I skip something over here? Okay, again, the lashon of the Friedrich Rebbe is Mamer. V'chein ein pella mashehem yechelim lekabel Erin Seif Hagoli. So in the lashon of the Friedrich Rebbe is Mamer, he's saying two things. There's the revelation of the Erin Seif, and then there's the Kabbalah. There's the fact that the Kalim are Makabal Erin Seif Hagoli. And now the Rebbe teaches what the Friedrich Rebbe is saying. The fact that there is a hispashtos, that the Eibush could be mispashet there, that's not a pella. And also the fact that the Eibush could exist and be there begili is also not a pella. On the other hand, an Eilim Mizbiyaz will be explained later, that's the Pella. That's a Pella that Eibush could be mispashet there. Okay, we have to stop over here for a second to try to explain what the Rebbe is saying here. First of all, you see here in the Lashon of the Rebbe uses this Lashon Shvach, the Shvach of Erin Seif. Here, the focus is to praise the greatness of the Eibush, to praise Erin Seif. Going back to what the Rebbe said in the beginning of the Eis, the difference between when you speak about Erin Seif Lamata Mata in Tachlis in relation to his Havus or in relation to the Eir itself. When you talk about Erin Seif Lamata Mata in Tachlis in relation to the Metzias of the world that's created, so the Chiddush here is that you look at a world and the world seems to be a limited place, but because Erin Seif created it, what's the emes? That within the Teva of the world itself, you'll discover a koyach of Ein Seif. If you look deeper into the mitzias of the world itself, you'll find koyach of Ein Seif. That's not, the nekud over here is not the shvach of Ein Seif. It's not to praise the Eibishter, Adarabbe. It's about finding the truth of what the mitzias of the world is. Hey, yes, it's created by the Eibishter, so this is also reflected in the mitzias of the world. Over here, though, we're not talking about anything in relation to the mitzias of the world. We're talking about praising the Eibishter, like he's saying davening, God lavayim the greatness of the Eibishter, how great the Ein Seif of the Eibishter is. That's the theme over here. To be meshabeach the Eibishter. The shvach of Ein Seif is the gilui and the espashtus. The Eibishter reveals himself. The Eibishter is mispashut and reveals himself ad Ein Seif. That's number one. That's the theme over here. The Lashon Rebbe says shvach. Now, if so, the question is, why does the Friedrich Rebbe speak about this, that the world is a keli for Ein Seif? L'chayre, if he's speaking about the shvach of the Eibishter, whether the world is a keli, whether the world is not a keli, that has nothing to do with the shvach of Ein Seif. The Eibishter himself is Ein Seif, and therefore he can be mispashet b'chol makom, even in a place which is not a keli. The mashal that I gave in the beginning, when we learned the Mamer a few times, is that a person that's able to teach a dvar seichel to a person that has seichel, or he's able to teach a dvar seichel even to a rock or to a wall that has no seichel, and he can be mispashet there as well. There's no keli, there's no seichel to be mekabelit. So what? By the Eibishter, he has no gedarim, and he can penetrate and he can be in this gala on every single level, and from one realm, another realm of existence, not even outside of him, so to speak. The Eibishter is mispashet everywhere. Whether it is a keli, whether it's not a keli, l'chayr is irrelevant if you're speaking about the shvach of the Eibishter. If you're talking about the fact that you want to show what the mitzias of the world itself is, that to discover that the Welt looks like a limited place, the Welt looks like a sheker, you want to be megala the mile of the mitzias of the Welt, there it's negay at this point. That the Welt is a keli for Ein Seif, but that's not the thing we're talking about over here. Over here we're talking about the shvach of Ein Seif itself. So what's this nakud in the gave here? That they're kalim. You see clearly the Friedrich Rebbe is pointing out ein pele klal da Ein Seif meir sham begilui, and it's also not a pele mashem yechelum lekabel Ein Seif hagoli.
That's the fourth instance.
Huh?
That's what you're talking
and a Chanami, right? Before Tzimtzum, or regarding Atzilus. What is the Pella? What's the real Shvach of the Eibishter? When he says Pella, it means if you want to really praise the true greatness of the Eibishter, it's the fact that he's able to be Mizgale in Olam Biyah, in the lower Olam, and not only that he's able to be Mizgale here, but he's actually able to be received there, that the world is a Keli for him. That's the real Pella, that's the real Shvach of the Eibishter. What I'm asking is, l'chayra, that second parat, the Keli, is not part of the Shvach of the Gili of Eirein Seif. That's a different Indian. That's benegate to his harvest, benegate to the Metzias of the Welt. That the Metzias of the Welt is a Keli for a Lakus. Here we're talking about the Shvach of the Spashtus of Eirein Seif. Okay, so the Nukud over here is, the Rebbe there's a sikha where the Rebbe speaks about this also. The simplest mashal always in Chassidus to use for this is when you talk about a Rav and a Talmud. So the Rebbe speaks about this regarding a Rav and a Talmud based on the Mishnah in Pirkei Yavis, where the Mishnah there says that there is a Talmud that is a bar such enema b'tippa. He receives everything the teacher tells him and he doesn't miss one drop, he absorbs everything. And then there's a different type of a Talmud, which is a Mayna Mizgaber. He's like a fountain on his own, where he constantly, the fountain, water rushes and comes more and more on his own. What's the difference? One kind of a student will be able to repeat to you every single word his teacher told him. He doesn't miss one word, but he has no koyach to be machadish anything on his own. He can't come up with his own seichel with the same ideas similar to what his teacher can think of. He's just a recipient. He's taking in what the teacher told him. And then there's a Mayna Mizgaber, meaning that there's a Talmud that has a koyach on his own, to be machadish on his own. After the teacher teaches him, he takes the derech of how the teacher taught him, the style of learning, and he's able to, on his own, come up and be machadish similar ideas as well, himself. Okay, so the Maila of the student, that's the Mayna Mizgaber, where does that come from? Where is the Maila of this student is he able to be machadish on his own? So b'pashtus, you would think that as far as the teacher is concerned, when he teaches his student, his job is finished by the fact that he transmitted the information clearly and perfectly. Whether the student now changes because of this, whether the student himself is able to come up on his own, stand on his own 2 feet, to be able to say his own svaras, that's not negate to the shleimus of the way the teacher teaches. The lashon that Chassidus always uses is, there's a gilui mul maila lamata, comes from the Rav to the Talmud. That's the gili is b'shleimus from the Rav when the teacher is makabel the inyan. The Rav gave it fully, clearly. In order for the student to be a machadish on his own, that will take work from the student himself. He's going to have to elevate himself. He's going to have to work on his own to come to such a level that he can be machadish himself. But the emes is, it's not so. The emes is, and you see this b'muchish, that of course it also depends on the way the teacher is teaching in the first place. There's a teacher that transmits the information perfectly, clearly, but he doesn't give it over in such a way that he's showing the student the derech, the way, how you come to this. He doesn't put the student on his own 2 feet. He teaches the student in such a way that the student will constantly be dependent on the Rav. He'll absorb every word, but he's always dependent on the Rav. A good teacher, a real teacher, is able to teach the student b'ayfen kazeh that the Talmud is mekabel the inyan, and not only is he mekabel it, but now that the student himself is able to be mechadish on his own. The fact that the student is able to be mechadish on his own, that's not only the work of the student himself, that shows also that this is a better teacher, that the Rav knows how to teach in such a oifen that he gives over the concept, not just the particular idea, but he gives over the whole derech, and therefore the student is able to stand on his own 2 feet. That's the real inyan of a teacher, that the student should be independent. A teacher will be more proud of a student if he's going to be independent than if the student will constantly be dependent on him. Adarav, that's the shleimus of what the teacher really intends to do. So al-khayr al-derech over here, the point that the Rebbe is explaining here, benegay to the gilui of Eirein Seif, the gilui of Eirein Seif, what's the shleimus of the gilui? The shleimus of the gilui is not just the revelation l'mayla l'mata. The shleimus of the gilui is the fact that the tachten can be mekabelit, the fact that the world becomes a keli to this gilui. That's a chelik of the shleimus of the gilui milmayla lamata as well. The full shleimus of the gilui is when the world itself becomes a keli for it. That's a chelik of the ispashtus of Eirein Seif, or of the gilui of Eirein Seif. Okay, that's the chayr of the pshat of here. There's more to it. I'll continue Mitzvah tomorrow.